If you've never lived in downtown Boston during the winter, it's hard to explain exactly what the wind does. It doesn't just blow, it channels. The city is a maze of narrow, twisting streets and tall brick buildings that act like canyons, compressing the air off the harbor until it hits you with enough force to knock the breath out of your lungs. It's a wet, heavy cold that ignores wool and down, finding every seam in your jacket. It turns the simple act of walking home into a physical battle. I lived in an apartment near the theater district, right next to one of the city's largest homeless shelters. When you live that close to the margins, you develop a kind of urban callus. You learn the rhythm of the block. Every evening at dusk, a line would form, people bundled in layers of mismatched coats, waiting for a bed. Once the doors locked, the overflow spilled back into the streets. Some nights it was quiet. Other nights you'd hear shouting matches that echoed off the brownstones until 3 a.m. You'd see ambulances flashing their lights in silence. You'd step over sleeping bags on your way to work. You learn to walk past it. You learn to keep your head down, your headphones in, and your eyes fixed on the middle distance. You tell yourself it's just city life. You tell yourself you're safe as long as you mind your own business. But you can't tune out everything. And sometimes, the city decides to show you exactly how thin the line is between your safe apartment and the chaos outside. It was a Tuesday in late January. I had spent the evening at a friend's place in the North End, eating pasta and drinking cheap wine, delaying the walk home until I couldn't put it off anymore. I left around midnight.
The walk from the North End to the theater district isn't long, maybe 20 minutes if you hustle, but that night it felt like an expedition. The wind was brutal. Every time I turned a corner, it slapped me in the face, stinging my eyes and freezing the moisture in my nose. It howled through the scaffolding of construction sites, making the plastic tarps snap like gunshots. I kept my head down, watching my boots crunch through the graying snow. By the time I crossed near Government Center, the wind had picked up speed. It was howling now, a physical weight pushing against my chest. I was walking into a headwind so strong, I had to lean forward just to keep moving. My face was numb. My fingers were aching inside my gloves. I needed a break. Just a minute out of the gale. I knew the area well enough to know there was a service alley cutting between two large commercial buildings up ahead. It wasn't a shortcut I usually took. It was narrow, dark, and smelled of dumpsters, but the buildings would block the wind. I turned in. The relief was instant. The wind died as soon as I stepped between the brick walls. The air here was still and strangely warm. Steam vents from the building's heating systems pumped clouds of white vapor into the narrow space, raising the temperature by 10 degrees. It smelled of wet cardboard and exhaust, but it wasn't freezing. I slowed down, unclenching my jaw, wiping the melting snow from my face. I was about halfway down the alley, navigating around a cluster of overflowing recycling bins, when I heard it. A laugh. It wasn't a loud, drunk laugh. It was soft, breathless. It sounded like dry leaves skittering on pavement. I stopped. The alley was dim, lit only by the ambient orange glow of the streetlights filtering in from the ends. The steam made everything hazy. "Hello?" I said. The laugh didn't stop. It didn't change pitch. It just continued, a steady, rhythmic loop. Then, from behind a large metal generator cage about 20 feet ahead of me, a figure stepped out. He was tall, impossibly tall. In the gloom, he looked like a marionette that had been stretched out. He had to be at least 6'8", maybe taller, but he was skeletal. His shoulders were narrow, sharp angles protruding under the fabric. His limbs were long and wiry. He wasn't wearing a coat. He was wearing a tattered, loose-knit blue sweater that hung off his frame like a rag. The sleeves were too short, exposing bony wrists. No hat, no gloves. And he was bald. His scalp was pale and shiny in the steam, mottled with sores or dirt, I couldn't tell which. It gleamed like wet plastic. He stood there in the center of the alley, blocking my path, swaying slightly. His arms hung at his sides at a weird angle, elbows locked, fingers twitching in a rapid, jerky rhythm. Tap, 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 tap against his own thighs. And he was laughing. His head was tilted back slightly, his mouth open. There was something dark smeared around his lips,
Maybe chocolate, maybe dried blood, maybe grease. It looked like a permanent, painted-on frown, but the sound coming out was that dry, wheezing chuckle. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were wide, staring up at the fire escape ladder bolted to the wall above my head. He was mumbling something under the laughter, a low, frantic stream of words I couldn't catch. Blue wire, snap, cold, snap, the birds don't like it. I stood frozen. The urban instinct, the one that says, don't engage, keep moving, usually works. It's the armor you wear in a city. You ignore the yelling. You ignore the outstretched hands. You pretend you are deaf and blind. But this felt different. This wasn't just a drunk guy or a junkie nodding off. There was a frenetic energy to him, a vibration. The air around him felt charged, like static electricity. My brain was screaming at me to run, but my legs felt heavy. I was trying to process what I was seeing. A man in a blue sweater, barefoot in a blizzard, laughing at a fire escape. It was so absurd, it was terrifying. He took a step toward me. His movement was wrong. It was jerky, uncoordinated, like his knees didn't want to bend. He dragged his left foot slightly. I didn't wait to see a second step.
I turned around and walked back the way I came. I didn't run. Running triggers a predator response, or at least that's what I told myself. But I walked fast. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Behind me, the laughter didn't get quieter. It sounded like it was staying exactly the same distance away. I reached the mouth of the alley and stepped back out onto the street. The wind hit me like a hammer. It was worse than before. A gust caught me mid-stride and actually pushed me backward a step. The snow was blowing horizontally now, a blinding white sheet. I couldn't walk forward into it. My face felt like it was being sandblasted. The cold was a physical barrier, trying to push me back into the alley, back to him. I did something I rarely do. I turned my back to the wind and started walking backward. I pulled my hood up, tucked my chin, and shuffled in reverse, letting the wind hit my back. I was looking back toward the alley entrance I had just left. I watched the dark opening of the alley recede as I moved away. The steam billowing out looked like ghosts escaping a trap. Empty. He hadn't followed me out. I relaxed a fraction of an inch. Just another city weirdo. Just another sad story lost in the steam. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself he was just looking for warmth, same as me. I kept walking backward, checking over my shoulder every few seconds to make sure I wasn't drifting into the street. The 7-Eleven sign was my beacon, a glowing green and red square about 2 blocks down. Once I got there, I was safe. I walked like that for a full block. Step, step, check. Step, step, check. The street was deserted. No cars, no people, just me and the wind. I reached the corner and glanced over my right shoulder to check the crosswalk. When I looked back to my left, he was there. He was walking right beside me. I hadn't heard him. I hadn't seen him approach. He was maybe 3 feet away, matching my backward pace perfectly. He was barefoot. His large, pale feet were slapping against the snow-covered sidewalk, the toes purple and raw. He didn't seem to notice.
He wasn't shivering. He was still wearing just that torn blue sweater. The holes in the knit revealed skin that looked gray and dead, pulled tight over his ribs. And he was still twitching. His fingers drummed against his legs. His head rolled loosely on his neck, like the muscles weren't strong enough to hold it up. But now, he wasn't looking at the fire escape. He was looking at me. No, that's not right. He was looking through me. His eyes were milky, unfocused, fixed on some point about a foot behind my head. They were huge, unblinking, rimmed in red. The laughter had stopped. Now it was just the mumbling. Crack the bone, eat the marrow, cold inside, warm inside. The voice was wet and guttural. It sounded like his throat was full of fluid. My brain short-circuited. You know that feeling in a nightmare where you try to scream and nothing comes out? It was that. The sheer proximity of him, the smell of unwashed skin, metallic decay, and something sweet like rotting fruit, paralyzed me. He took another step. His bare foot squelched in the slush. He leaned toward me, his long, thin neck craning out like a vulture. You have warm
eyes," he whispered. That broke the spell. I didn't just turn, I spun. I abandoned the walking backwards strategy. I put my head down into the wind and I ran. I ran blindly, slipping on the ice, my boots skidding. I didn't care about the cold anymore. I didn't care about the wind flaying my skin. I just needed to get to the lights. I sprinted toward the 7-Eleven. The distance seemed to stretch. The green sign bobbed in the wind, taunting me. I could hear footsteps behind me now. Slap, slap, slap. Wet skin hitting pavement, fast, uneven. He was running too. I pumped my arms, forcing my legs to move faster. The wind was screaming in my ears, but I could still hear him. He was making noises now, high-pitched yips of excitement, like a coyote. I reached the glass doors of the convenience store and threw my full weight against the handle. I stumbled inside, nearly tripping over the welcome mat. The chime dinged. Bing pong. The heat hit me.
The smell of burnt coffee and floor wax. I spun around, chest heaving, and looked through the glass. The sidewalk was empty. The snow swirled in the light of the store sign. He wasn't there. I backed away from the door, retreating down the candy aisle, gasping for air. The clerk, a bored teenager with earbuds in, looked up from his phone. "You good, man?" he asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Yeah," I wheezed. "Yeah, just cold." I pretended to look at the energy drinks. My hands were shaking so bad I knocked a can of Monster off the shelf. It clattered loud in the quiet store. I stayed there for 5 minutes, then 10, then 15. I walked the aisles, trying to slow my heart rate. I read the labels on protein bars. I stared at the hot dog roller. Every time the door chime rang, I jumped. But it was just a cop grabbing a coffee or a couple of college kids buying snacks. I couldn't stay in the 7-Eleven forever. The clerk was starting to give me weird looks. He was watching me in the convex mirror. I lived 1 block away, just 1 block. I bought a bottle of water just to have a reason to be there, paid with trembling fingers, and walked to the door. I peered out. The coast was clear. The street was empty as far as I could see. "Okay," I whispered. "Just run." I pushed the door open. The wind was still howling, but the snow had slowed down. I stepped out. I looked left. Empty. I looked right. Empty. I started walking, fast, heading for my building. I made it to the corner. I turned out to my street. My apartment building was 3 doors down. I could see the stoop. I could see the warm yellow light of the vestibule. It looked like the gates of heaven. I reached into my pocket and gripped my keys. I threaded the front door key between my knuckles, ready to strike the lock the second I got there. I was 10 feet away. I couldn't help it. I glanced back. He was standing under the 7-Eleven sign. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, illuminated by the green glow, like a statue made of bones and rags. He must have been waiting around the corner, just out of sight of the glass doors. He was watching me. And then he smiled. It was a wide, impossible smile that stretched the dark smear around his mouth until it cracked. His teeth were gray stumps. He started to run. Not the loping, uneven run from before. This was a sprint. His long legs ate up the distance. He moved with terrifying speed, arms flailing like windmills. He didn't make a sound. No yipping, no laughing, just silent, focused speed. I threw myself at my front door. I jammed the key into the lock. It stuck. The cold had frozen the mechanism slightly. "Come on," I screamed. "Come on!" I heard the slap, slap, slap of his feet on the snow. He was close. I could hear his breathing, a wet, rattling sound. I could smell him again. I twisted the key with both hands, adrenaline giving me strength. Click. The lock turned. I shoved the door open, fell into the vestibule, and slammed it shut behind me. I threw the deadbolt. Thud. A body hit the door on the other side. It wasn't a knock, it was a collision. Like he had run full speed into the wood without even putting his hands up. Then silence. I backed away, up the stairs, stumbling, watching the door.
I waited for him to pound on it. I waited for him to scream. Nothing. I ran up to my third-floor apartment, locked that door too, and threw the chain on. I pushed a chair under the knob. I went to the window, the one that overlooks the street. I kept the lights off. I pulled the blind back just an inch. The street below was empty. There were footprints in the snow leading up to my door, large, bare footprints. But there were no prints leading away. He hadn't walked back to the street. I pressed my face against the glass, trying to see the stoop directly below. I couldn't see him, but I knew he was there, huddled in a doorway, waiting for the wind to die down, or waiting for me to come back out. I watched for hours. Eventually, a snowplow came by, burying the sidewalk in a fresh wave of slush. When the sun finally came up, the prints were gone. I didn't leave the apartment for 2 days. I moved out 2 months later. I broke my lease. I didn't care about the deposit.
But sometimes when it snows and the wind hits the windows just right, I swear I can hear it. And I wonder if he's still out there, walking backward in the dark, waiting for someone to notice his warm eyes.